Okay, this is chapter 11, and this is international and global issues with respect to environment. Um, now, your author is going to be talking about now international risks and international attempts to deal with effects on the environment, and certainly global warming is the ultimate effect on the environment. But he also is going to be talking about, in particular, the market for ivory and in Africa, and this is you've got buyers who value it primarily in Asia, and then you got supply that's in Africa. So there's going to be a supply and demand model of this, and we'll also be talking about um, different international organizations. And in this first section is going to be a bit about globalization. Okay, so speaking of which, we've got globalization and the environment, good and the bad and the ugly. So benefits of globalization and international trade. And I teach this in both my macro and macro classes. It certainly does make us better off in terms of more goods available, increases specialization, and the exchange of ideas can foster education and promote the understanding of other cultures. Cooperation can lead to important medicinal cures and technological leaps. So, why are some bitterly opposed to globalization? Well, they worry about the influence of multinational corporations, um, rivals democratically elected governments, concentration of power, impact on the environment, a bad impact on the environment, and impact on workers. I give a forum assignment about the downside of globalization with regard to the impact on workers. So, yeah, there's definitely some bad things about globalization. Okay, so speaking of which, three outcomes of globalization. And here we've got an example of diversity, spices on display in India. Um, and that's the diversity part. And now we've got the homogenization, McDonald's, which exists everywhere around the world, and other American brands that also have almost as much of a footprint. Places like Starbucks, for example, Burger King, Kentucky Fried Chicken. Some degree of homogenization involved. So cooperation. Um, so there are benefits to international cooperation. Specialization in trade can provide the benefits of comparative advantage. Shared information can provide a public good to those who otherwise might have to reinvent it. Cooperation permits the sharing of risk, like health, not unlike health insurance. Individuals can receive funds from the collective pool of premiums. Um, UNICEF provided clean water and sanitation equipment to Haiti. So there's a benefit to internationally pooling our resources and helping those in need, and also encouraging innovation. But there's also homogenization, definitely a cost. Lost languages, spread of similar eating habits around the world, as opposed to the cultural diversity of food. So, fast food franchises are symbolic of a more general dissemination of unsustainable practices and lifestyles. Lots of criticisms on McDonald's using overusing meat and beef, and the idea of overproduction of methane, which is definitely a harmful product that is influencing global warming. And finally, oh my goodness, exploitation. Um, Now, global trade could permit a spreading of wealth. Instead, it oftentimes contributes to inequality, wealth and income inequality, and definitely exploitation um, of natural resources as well. But modern trade policies often include provisions to protect the environment, like the North American Free Trade Agreement. Has let's see if the fifth edition has something. No, looks like it has the same thing. Um, includes language that prevents strict environmental challenge standards from being challenged as non-tariff trade barriers. And it also discourages countries from lowering their environmental standards as an incentive for firms to relocate. NAFTA, if you remember from my macro and micro classes, is the North American Free Trade Agreement, and it is an agreement between United States, Canada, and Mexico to lower trade barriers to increase trade and prosperity around in those three regions. Okay, and I just said that modern trade policies often include provisions to protect the environment. Okay, so this next section is going to be a bit about international organizations that exist, and hopefully you recognize that that is indeed the United Nations. And the United Nations um, has a very broad charter, promotes international cooperation, and sometimes has to get involved when there's conflict between countries. And there's been several conferences focused on the environment, including the 1992 Rio de Janeiro Conference on the Environment and Development, 2002 World Summit on Sustainable Development. The UN Global Compact is the world's largest corporate sustainability initiative. Um, and it also supports the precautionary principle, which I'll talk about in the last slide, which is to take precautionary measures against serious threats to humans or the environment, even if scientific research to establish the cause and effects of those threats are incomplete. Mm-hmm. World Trade Organization, WTO. This seeks to make trade agreements among world nations to reduce trade barriers, and that's all well and good. Um, but many folks criticize the WTO because in making trade barriers less increases world trade and perhaps lowers environmental standards for countries around the world. And talked a little bit about um, Venezuela here, and um, let's see talking about Venezuela and oil and perhaps reducing environmental standards. But WTO has also some provisions in there to protect intellectual property rights, and it is clear, however, that environmental economics was on the minds of the founders of the WTO. Um, uh, and they stated in the 1994 Marrakesh Agreement that relations in the field of trade and economic endeavor should be conducted while allowing for the optimal use of the world's resources in accordance to the objective of sustainable development. That is definitely looking out a little bit for the environment. And we have also the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund. Both organizations seek to address world poverty and to stabilize the economy, but in different ways. The World Bank does grants to countries that need help and expertise. International Monetary Fund is a lending agency to bring an economy back on its feet again. But both have been lauded and both have been criticized for their impact on the environment. Some say that the World Bank favors large-scale development projects as opposed to smaller, sustainable endeavors. And many had criticized the IMF that because it puts countries in a straitjacket to just pay off the IMF, the creditors. All three institutions have been criticized by globalization critics and environmental activists. If you read your book, the evidence is mixed with all three of these institutions. Okay, so now we're on to approaches to specific global environmental threats. This first one is acid rain. And acid rain, and I think it was talked about in a previous chapter, is airborne releases of sulfur dioxide that returns to Earth as rain, fog, or snow. Now, there have been unilateral measures, meaning within the United States, such as the Clean Air Act and tradable emissions permits, so kind of a cap and trade type of idea. But there have also been multilateral conferences and agreements, such as AEGLO, which means what? Protocol. This was done. It's the protocol to abate acidification, eutrophication, and ground level ozone in Sweden during the 1999 meeting. So there's been lots of groups that have met to deal with the issue and problem of acid rain. Our next one is deforestation, and here we have a deforestation in the Amazon forest and the melting of glaciers. Certainly, to slow the melting of glaciers, like this one in Alaska, we may need to slow deforestation in places like Brazil. So one definitely leads to the other. And this is a classic externalities problem. It pits private goods or private property force versus public goods climate control. Now, the size of the Earth's forests have decreased dramatically. Has fallen from 7.1 billion acres to 3.5 billion acres, so basically cut in half. And an estimated 80,000 acres are cleared every day. The World Resources Institute estimates that a species becomes extinct every 15 minutes due to deforestation. So it is a lot. There are myriad efforts to stave off deforestation, and these are international in nature. Tropical Forestry Action Plan to promote international donor coordination in the development of national forestry action plans and stimulate related policy initiatives. There is also the International Tropical Timber Agreement. It's a binding commodity agreement between consumers and producers of tropical timber, so as to probably put some limits on the cutting of tropical timber, international. And these efforts your book talks about, and there's a couple of others here, are laudable, but the initiatives are difficult to implement, monitor, and enforce. Oh, yes, and I should mention, excuse me. Yeah, Brazil's new president, Jair Bolsonaro, has not been a friend of has been a friend of deforestation and has not been a friend of the environment. Okay. Now we look at the world of threatened species, and this is a rhino foot ashtray. And and kind of a supply and demand look at things here. And high prices generally motivate producers to produce more. So if you decrease the supply of something, that's just one that's half of the battle to deal with the issue of threatened species. And your your book is probably going to talk a bit about ivory. Now there is a substitutability is difficult because there is a difference with regard to wild species, as raising in captivity is difficult and yields inferior products. So yeah, it's kind of like having a wild chicken versus a chicken grown a free range chicken as opposed to a chicken grown with drugs and captivity. Obviously, the free range chicken is going to be of much higher quality. Um, Now, endangered species poaching shifts the supply curve to the left, leaving less at a higher price. And again, this is the tragedy of the commons, which is a big issue with regard to environmental economics. Remember, the tragedy of the commons is we have a common area that is not necessarily owned, and there is an incentive to get at the resource before somebody else gets at it. So definitely some lack of private property leads to this issue of the tragedy of the commons. Okay, this is going to be the end of session one, and we'll get on to the next session in just a little bit.